happy to be here, and the talk about what is statistics, mathematics, any of that is going to be doing in years to come because of ChatGPT and Gemini and so on will all take care. That is what is belief. And well, the similar talk was there even if you go back 10 years, 15 years ago, before we had heard the phrase ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok. At that time it was data science. Okay. And that why do you need? We have a software, we just feed the data into a software and that will answer our question. Today now you don't need to feed the data, you can just ask a question and you get an answer. And I have been experimenting with it. It is amazing, it is improving, it is amazing, no doubt about that. It would be foolish to deny that it has had a huge impact. Okay, but what I am going to talk about will tell you that through examples that indeed there is still some requirement for people to think and apply their mind rather than just look at the data. Okay? Doesn't matter how large data you have. So first and foremost, let's quickly look at, there are many scenarios where you don't have a large chunk of data. You simply don't have. Let's say one area where probability statistics had a huge impact in history is what is called quality control. Okay. So you have some things being manufactured in the factory, you have designed to make it in a certain way, but not all items that come out are very good. Some of them may have difficulties, may not work, may crash, may do what and what not. So then for companies, in order to provide more to make people confident in buying their product, they said, oh, we'll give you warranty, or guarantee is now called warranty. That if it fails in so many days or so many months, so many years, etc., we'll replace it fully, we'll repair it, we'll do this, we'll do that kind of thing. But to do that, they needed to do assess how good is their manufacturing system. And that is where there was a origin of quality control. Interestingly, these tools mostly were developed in the Western world. Okay. Before and even after the World War II. Okay. Around that time already, Professor Mahalanobis had gotten hooked by statistics and data, and he had realized its importance in times to come. And then there were coursework going on in ISI on quality control. But in Western world, the people just didn't care. Their cars were being made, people were buying. That was like the buyer's market. So whatever price you want, people are there to buy. So why should you care? Same was the case in India. Here it was the shortage, economy of shortage. So some of you will be very surprised to hear. Maybe you have heard such stories from your parents or grandparents. But I'm not talking about, I'm talking of my own time. Okay. You want to buy a car, you want to pay everything up front, you have waiting time, 7 years, 5 years. Even for a two-wheeler, there were waiting time of 7 to 10 years. I'm talking of when I finished my PhD, so 1982, 80, something like that. There was one special Bajaj had a two-wheeler which was called Chetak. So that if you pay in foreign exchange, you could get faster. So I had gone to US, did postdoc for 2 years, returned, so I had dollars in cash. So I go to the shop. And this is 84. They buy it. They say, yeah, I will give you. Except that abhi stock nahi hai. I said, kab aayega? Pata nahi. I said, okay. And the terms were, now today you will think that I am cooking it up, but no. The terms were, I pay full price upfront today, okay, when the vehicle will be delivered, if there is a price escalation by then, I have to pay the difference. So that was India then. So while ISI they were teaching these courses on quality control, people are studying, but no Indian industry was interested. Some public sector undertakings were interested somewhat, but that's it. Japanese, on the other hand, after World War II when their economy was destroyed, they were taking it seriously. So some of them went to the West and studied, some of them actually came to ISI and studied, went back, implemented those tools and improved the quality of Japanese car manufacturing by a mile. Okay. So much so that in 80s when I went to US, all other products in the advertisement, they will make very fantastic claims, best this, best that, etc., etc. And I used to watch a lot because that was a new experience for me, watching TV and so on. Long days. India used to be 2 hours or so on. So the ads on the television, they can't even claim that best built car in the world or best built car, full stop. Best built car in America. So I asked my American friends, ye kya hai? Why are they not saying best built cars in the world? They say, oh, that is because if they say it, people know it is wrong. The Japanese cars had taken over like mad. So by implementing quality control. Alright. So, but now imagine, you launch a factory, will you wait for years for it to turn out 1 million products and then decide whether your machine is good or not? If you have turned out 1 million, then how does it matter? Right? If you have not gone broke by then, that means your thing is good. Otherwise you will be going broke. So, point is, there is scenarios where there is not enough data. More recent times, all of us have gone through the COVID era. Each one has had a different impact. Yourself, people close to you, dear to you, parents, grandparents, whatever. Each of us would have a different story. We can just keep ours relating our own experiences. But it came in so suddenly that there were no medicines. And they had to develop the urgent need was vaccine. Now, they have a protocol about vaccine approvals, like medicine approvals. You do trials with animals, then you do trials with humans, then you submit data, then they will analyze. Typically, a new medicine getting, once you submit, it is at least 5 years. Once you are convinced and you start making it, it is at least 5 years. Earlier in developing it can take longer. Now, we don't know where the world would have been if there were no vaccines. Not saying that vaccines were great, but given the shortage of time, they had to. So, and not just vaccines, even medicines are basically approved, etc., based on statistics. And you can't wait there for a large data set to come before LLMs can answer your question whether this is good or not. So, one can go on and on about the availability of data, relevant to the data, and so there will be scenarios where you do not have enough data and you have to take recourse to statistics, theory, whatever work people have done, more than that, whatever thoughts people have had over the years. One can go on about examples of this kind. Now, let's come to scenarios where you either have or you can have large chunk of data. Is there need for statistics or statistical thinking, mathematics, etc., given that now we have relevance? Now, in the data world, a lot of talks are there, but let me go back to almost the beginning of what is in modern times being called statistics, and tools such as correlation and regression. Anybody who has done some course on probability statistics has heard these phrases, correlation and regression. So both of them were actually introduced in the same paper, though it would focus more on regression and not on correlation, and a follow-up paper talked about correlation. And have you tried to think about the word regression? What does it stand for? It's a kind of the regress. Regression comes from regress, and regress is the opposite of progress. So regress is a negative connotation word. And I always used to wonder that why is it that the most popular tool in statistics, popular tool, not just popular tool, but the most used statistical technique in anything and everything, including in LLMs. It does lots of stuff and finally it comes down to some kind of regression. Maybe in a trillion dimensional space, but ultimately it is coming to some kind of regression. Okay? Why does it have a negative connotation? And you have to go back to its origin. And so there's this Sir Francis Galton. So Sir means he was already having a lot of money, coming from a very influential family, and impact, and people think of him as good person, etc. Okay. He was a cousin of Darwin, a bit younger, and the time frame is about 1860s, 1870s, and he, like Darwin's thing, as soon as he proposed the genetics, evolution, etc., people accepted it and he became very popular. So Galton also thought that, okay, let me see about this. He was worried that if what Darwin says is true, in general, that then what will happen to intelligence? If both parents are intelligent, the child will be intelligent, and if both parents are dumb, child will be dumb. So his focus was on intelligence and how it will propagate across generations. Okay? And so he conducted some experiments. Now, what experiments? You can't have children born and their intelligence studied and successively will take forever. No one person can do that. So his thing was, anyway, Darwin's theory is general in biology. Evolution of species, evolution of this and that. So simplest thing was to look at agriculture. And lots of early research, early development, early trials happen on matar ke dane, peas. Because I think each generation comes up very quickly. You sow the seed today and the number of days taken till you get the next generation is fairly quickest maybe. So what he did was he collected fresh peas and divided them in 10 groups, let's say, by their size. Okay? And sent it to 10 friends. And wrote to them that you put them in wherever you can, in a pot or field or whatever. And when the next generation thing comes, send it to me. People were happy to do that. And he saw that if the parent seed is much bigger than the average, then the next generation seed, the child seed, would also be bigger than average, but overall lesser than the parent seed. And vice versa on the negative side. If it is too small a thing compared to average, the child seed will be slightly better, but still below average, most of the time. He has written this. And then we wanted to quickly come to humans. Now, intelligence measuring, accepting, all that is very complicated. What is the simplest thing that one could do? Nobody will object to your height being measured. Right? Anything else you may object. because it may, if something is to be poked, something else needs to be, height, okay, by all means, le lo meri height kya hai, right? So he collected data on heights of, I am simplifying it, not exactly what he did, but simplifying for the discussion. Heights of father-son pairs. Okay. Father's height, son's height, and of course son's height means son who is about 20 years old. So jo hai wo hai, is not going to go in. And he saw that the same thing applies, what he saw in P's is also applying to heights of father, heights of son. The son will also be, if the father is very tall compared to the average, so will be the son, but closer to average and vice versa. He wrote on this, he gave lectures in Royal Society, he was president of one subsection of Royal Society. And this is where the word regression came. He called it the word regression to the mean. Okay? And then his thought was that, okay, if it happens every generation, so he has observed with P's, he has observed with heights. So it jumps to conclusion, it affects everything, including intelligence. He didn't say it in as many words, maybe, but believe. And then with every generation, this will happen. People took his things too seriously. A new area, which is now forgotten, thankfully, it was evolved, called eugenics. The word regression origins in Galton's paper. The correlation is also there, except that he didn't put enough emphasis. His follower, or not by his student, but somebody who believed in him a lot and followed a lot of his things, called Carl Pearson, he introduced correlation from there, wrote down from name, gave it a name, and so on. And so Galton, as I mentioned to you, was a very rich family, so he donated a lot of money in University College London. They created a department of eugenics. And Pearson was professor of Department of Eugenics. And in some of the Western world, they took his things too seriously. They said, okay, intelligence, this is what is happening. So they said that we should do a policy where if you find an intelligent boy and an intelligent girl, push them to marry fast, not do anything else, just have lots of children and keep their money from the state. Okay? And vice versa, if there are criminals or people with bad characteristics that you don't want, sterilize them, let them not have children. Horrible that it sounds, in US, at least 20 states enacted laws to this effect for criminals. It is claimed that Nazis took off this idea, and because they didn't want Jews to be around, that is the origin of all this thing which happened in the World War II era. But that gave such a bad name to this that the word eugenics, first of all, so there was Society of Eugenics, there will be conferences of eugenics, Department of Eugenics, all was forgotten. I had also not heard of the word eugenics till a couple of decades ago when I wanted to do some history research in the past. Where do these things come from? Anyway, so the point is that, and it was pointed out to Galton, but he ignored, was that his data that he showed, same data you ask the opposite question. You take a very tall son. Okay. What will the average height of his father? It will be shorter than him. But so the father-son, it's not a one-way transformation. It's the way you do, and it's like in statistics it is called X and Y. Regression of X on Y and Y on X. So it's like you have a pair of data on X and Y, X father side, Y son side. You plot the data and you try to get a linear function which will be closest to the reality. But closest to reality means if you assume you are given X, you are looking at Y, then you will look at the vertical height between the what your curve is giving and the true height. If you are doing the other way, you will be looking at X. So you are observing and minimizing two different objectives. So no wonder that you get two different lines. So as simple fact as that, it was pointed out to Galton, but he would not have anything to do with it. So why I am bringing it up today is that Okay, Galton did not have huge chunk of data. But today you can have huge chunk of data. Let's say passport database. It's not easy to access, but let's say because I am chairman National Statistics Commission, I can perhaps tell them that no, for serious research we need this, and we get data on all those who have made passport applications. Height is there basic. So height and father son combinations. So I can filter out, maybe get lakhs of pairs of father and son above 20 years age, and any LLM you feed it, it will going to, using this data, if you want to predict the height of a son based on father's height, it will give you the same answer that Galton got. Except that you will get likewise when you reverse the process. And unless you have thought about such issues, you can be led to a wrong conclusion. So, what this example and a few more that I will talk about tell you is just not having data alone, large chunk is not enough. How it relates to the question you are asking, how it relates to the answer you are getting, and what will be its impact on the answer you get. So, these things are extremely important, and misunderstanding them or not giving enough attention to them, you can reach horribly incorrect conclusions. Okay. So this was an example, 150-year-old, okay. 1860, 70, something like that. Now again, let's come to the current times, COVID times. As I mentioned in the beginning, there was absolutely no medicine, and lockdown to kar liya, various countries including India, but what would have happened if everybody was at home? You won't get anything, right? So they needed people to go, and some people to be available to do cleaning of the cities, keeping the supply lines open, so that when you order you will get food home, or you can walk by nearby shop and buy, but that shop has to have food there, right? Illness, you have to be able to go to the hospitals. In hospitals you needed patients, you needed doctors and support staff. So, large number of people had to go out and work actually. And quickly, there was no medicine available. So, some of the medical people who look at such questions, they felt that in the absence of anything, the best bet they felt was what is called hydrochloroquine, HCQ, which is the medicine given for malaria, prevention and control of malaria. For one, it was available in plentiful, number one. Number two, there are some biologic properties which I don't understand why they believe that it may be a cure or at least preventive. So, quickly after lockdown, they had a policy that all people who are required to go and work, there are some names given for these workers. For them, the morning nikalte, you are, when you reach your office, you will be given one chloroquine tablet. Chloroquine is the medical name, HCQ is the chemical name, chloroquine tablet to everybody. Now, this was late March. In 2 months, end of May, there was a paper, forgetting the name of one of the top journals in medicine.
Nature.
Nature. Not Nature, else naam hai. Okay. I'll get the name. But in that, there was a paper which claimed that they had collected data and analyzed data from across the continents, okay, and which showed that not only HCQ is not improving, it may be actually worsening. May 2000, if you are searching, then May 2020 paper on HCQ. So, immediately World Health Organization, which controls all these things across the globe, so they were doing some clinical trials to test whether COVID.
The Journal of Lancet.
Lancet, yes. So they WHO stopped all the chemical trials, clinical trials going on HCQ as a medicine, and with Indian media, television particularly, there is not everyday kya baat karenge wo, so it's something new they need. So as soon as this WHO ban kiya, all Indian media went hammer and tongs ki sarkar ko akal nahi hai. They, on one hand, it is now proven that this is bad, and they are still feeding people who go out to work for us. They are feeding them this medicine. So at that point of time, a close friend of mine, he was at that time Director General CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. The top, he was the top boss of that. He called me. By the way, his son studied at CMI. Nikhil Mande, his dad. So his dad called me and told me that, have you seen this paper? It is being talked about a lot. I said no. So he said, I am sending you. He sent me the paper. He said, we have other questions, question mark about this paper, but can you look at the statistical aspect of this and tell us your view? So with nothing else to do, sitting at home, in one day I read it. एक बार, दो बार, तीन बार, छोटा पेपर था, and one question came to my mind. So the data they claimed was so many hospitals, data on patients, I mean people who came to the hospital and tested, who showed positive, and others who came, and some of them were given HCQ, some of them were not given HCQ. And then they gave what is called 2x2 table. Given HCQ, not given HCQ, worsened, improved. Worsened could actually be death or severe. Proportion, ratios. That is what is called a 2x2 table in early statistics course, where if something is related, so if the row-wise they look the same percentages, then it has no impact, and if you have one side top-sided. So what they saw was that amongst those who got HCQ, the death rates had been lot more than those who did not get HCQ. Okay, and that was the source of their conclusion, and everything going hammer and tongs. Now, 3 times I read the paper, and there was nowhere any mention as to who decided who will get HCQ and who will not give HCQ. Obviously, they are not going to do a coin toss and decide kisko milega, isko nahi milega, right?
It was given out of the basis of severity.
As soon as you think on this line, you will get the same answer. There can't be any other answer, right? Severity. And so the more severe the people, they were getting, because the supply was very short. So obviously, severe people will get more, and therefore there is no surprise that whether HCQ improved or not is a different matter. There will be more deaths in the severe cases. So it's such a simple thing, but ignoring that Lancet, which is at least one of the top 3 journals, they published the paper. Everybody accepts, including WHO, okay, and Indian media. Postscript of the story: I tried to contact my friends in the media, because I have done election related stuff for like 20 odd years already before COVID. I knew various people in the media. Several of them are still there. None of them were interested in doing a story. I said, look, I will appear online, but my colleague who is a DG CSIR, he is in Delhi, he can come in person. We can do a show on this, we can do this, we can do that. But if you want to say something is good, nobody wants to listen. And only when they give galis that people listen. So, not that the anchor or the channel is bad, everybody is after TR. Yeah?
Professor, a lot of what you're talking about is how data often gets represented, even though it's correct data, it's showing some positive correlation, but it's not telling the entire story. My question stems down to statistical racism and how, you know that, for example, when a statistic is thrown that 13% of the population occupies 65% of the jail inmate population in the United States, and it shows a positive correlation that between black people and crime there's a high correlation. But by the two reasons might be some socioeconomic factors, poverty, and multitudes. How do you go about identifying these things, and how do you find where it is actually a true correlation and not just a causality?
So that's a more deeper question. This is a misuse of statistics or ill-use of statistics. Misuse means unknowingly you do it, and ill-use means you know but you ignore that and do it. And by itself, we cannot say therefore statistics is good or bad. Okay. I will use a line which my dad had written to me when I was still in school at a debate, school debate. The debate was supposed to be on science, is it bane or boon for the society? Okay. And I was supposed to be representing the side which is boon for the society. So my dad said that doesn't matter which side you represent, you can still use this line, whichever that by itself you can't argue. It is how it is used. And his example was, is knife a good or a bad? In the hands of a surgeon it can save lives, and in the hands of a murderer it can take lives. It's a question of how you use the knife. Same applies for statistics. Okay. So that there has been tremendous misuse, ill-use both of statistics and in all the examples you gave and many more. Okay. You walk into a US, you land there, or at the airport, even if internally they will say, we have an algorithm which is randomly going to choose one in every 5 person who will go through extra security. And invariably more Asians, more who, because of their dressing looks like Muslim, or whoever name which identifies them as Muslim, they are going to be checked out more. So these are there. Now the question is, what do you do about it?
Is there a formal method of finding like something to do with K orders of thought? Like how deep does your reasoning actually go in correlative terms? Or is there a formal method of actually figuring out whether the data which is shown is accurate, or is it telling?
No, there is no method which will apply only to the data. It is to do with how the data is collected, who has presented it, is it the whole data, is it the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Or is it the truth but may not be the whole truth?
This is the truth. The 13% of the population is occupying 65% of the data.
Yes.
That is an absolute truth. So if I want to present a particular data, my question stands. By the way, my name is Chaitanya. I have a Bachelor of Statistics in Data Science at IIT Kanpur. So my question is, when I want to present a particular set of data, and for certain topics which I am informed about, well informed about. For example, I know that being in jail or high criminal activity does have a lot more socioeconomic factors than purely a race. But if I am trying to present a data which I have not completely understood, or maybe I do not understand the nuances of that particular data, how do I figure out and what steps do I take in order to ensure that the data I am showing?
No, you cannot take any step by looking at the data. You have to get into the domain knowledge, you have to understand, you have to talk to people who understand that domain that you are trying to present the data about.
Doesn't that make most statistics willy-nilly on a person's opinion?
Sorry?
That does make any data that I am showing or any data that I am coming across, it is a willy-nilly bias about a person who is presenting that data, right?
No. So what is your, what is the takeoff from that? You have to, if you want to do an honest job, you have to get into domain and you have to understand, is it even anything to do with the data? The question and the answer and this data, what are this triangle, what are the connections between?
There is no formal mathematical
method. No formal mathematical statistical tool which will tell you that. Oh, one can, absurdity one can get. So, again, you all are too young, but in the 90s, okay, 1990s, there were several days on the front page in Times of India. There were a big story about, sometimes with graphs, sometimes with pictures. Sachin scores yet another century and the stock market zooms up. There were graphs which showing that the date when Sachin's total in something reaches 3,000, stock market 3,000, Sachin reaches 5,000, stock market 5,000. They are not making any implication. They could not make any claim. But on front page in Times of India, such stories appear. I wish I had taken photographs now. I try to go back and try to take some. I have some graphs of this kind, but you can yourself search. And now the point is, we cannot blame the newspaper. They are saying, हमने तो graph बनाया है, हमने तो कुछ बोला नहीं कि that is the reason. Now it is the stupidity of the people who may be interpreting that. So what I am saying is that there are, you search for what this is sometimes called nuisance correlation.
Spurious correlation.
Spurious, nuisance, whatever. Okay. And there are data things about in US coastal town, the sale of ice cream and suicides. Now in US, obviously, in the summer time, more people will consume ice cream than in winter time. In winter time, nobody is going to swim on the in the sea. People are going in there in the summer. So whatever deaths are there because of that are more there than elsewhere. Right? So the point is, just data is not going to give you the answer. You have to understand what this data represents. And is it the whole truth? It is even a name whether you are ignoring another important variable. So another story of on this line, this is called Simpson's paradox. And the story on that is, there was a story in 1973, somebody writes that, oh, University of California is a gender bias. Now they talk of themselves as, very very liberal and open-hearted, etc., etc. So the data said they're looking at maybe graduate admissions, okay, and percentage of women who are accepted and percentage of men who are accepted. It's not like 30, 100, but still it was like 13 and 6, 20 or 13 and 22 or something like that. So gap enough. So they are gender bias. So this is there. This is the article on the page on this on Wikipedia. Simpson's paradox and University of California connection. So the statistics department in California, UC California, Berkeley, they said कि हम लोग तो नहीं करते. Let's see कौन कर रहा है. So they try to look at department-wise data. Which department is culprit? Okay, and they find something very interesting. This data, actual data is there in the Wikipedia article that they have listed top 6, top meaning the largest number of students are applying and admitting kind of thing. Top 6 department, they don't give the name, they say ABCD, and number of male applicants, number of female applicants, number of male selected, number of female selected, percentages, total. Now, if anything, there is a gender bias. It was pro-women. They wanted to be more careful. So, 4 out of the 6 departments, the ratios were more for women than for men. In one, they were nearly even Steven, but a little advantage to men. And one, there was a lot more amongst men. Now, the problem was that there is asymmetry in number of applicants. Math में कितने लोग apply करेंगे? Biology and related इसमें बहुत लोग apply कर रहे हैं. So, when you bring in this extra variable called department, okay, then you see that whole story doesn't go anywhere. You ignore department and you get one story. So this is called Simpson's paradox, some paper in 1950s. But actually Pearson, about whom I talked earlier, and they had written about this kind of thing, even 1899 or something like that, they have written about this. So it's well known in the statistics circles. But in economics it is called omitted variable bias. There is an important variable which you omitted, and that is what is leading to this bias. So again I repeat to your question is that you have to look into the domain, you have to understand are there important variables which should have measured but we have ignored. Okay. And is that the cause or is your claim really the cause? So, so the see, there is always a phase that general media or general talk kind of something is like, this is the ultimate. Oh yeah. So, completely unrelated, but a story to relate this. Okay. So it was the year is somewhere around 1991, 92, and I had gone and spent a year at University of California, Santa Barbara, and statistics department. We will go for lunch and we will be generally chatting with other colleagues. Some of them very senior, some like my age. At that time I was young. So then there was, at that time, the computerization was already there. People had computers, not in India in their own office, but in US they were, early 90s. And the system in US is very different. You take an exam, you are the teacher, the exam is given, then you put on the your office door the grades. And depending on the university, then you can publish names, you may not publish names, you can give them this number, or you can give fictitious number, whatever, only the student can identify mujhe kitna mila hai, things like that. But they will be posted on the board. And then invariably students will walk into argue. Ye kya hai, why not here, why this, why that, etc. So one of the colleagues said, thankfully this computerized this thing, and putting a computer output has saved me. I said, what happened? How does it save you? He says, now when people come to argue, I tell them, I don't know, computer ne bola hai. I fed the data and these are the grades given by the computer. And student also would happily walk away. So this the thing like something which is at that time at the center stage, people will take it. So at one point anything written was taken as the truth, the absolute truth. Now anything given on the computer output was taken. Now anything that ChatGPT or Gemini will say is taken as output. After 10 years something new will change. Right? But the simple things like whether is there a bias in data collection? Is there, have you collected all the data? Or there could even be, let's say, some impact of some medicine and cures, etc. is there. Okay. Now, let's say cancer. Some data work is going on collecting data. People have this level of cancer and they've lived or not lived, etc., etc. Some medicines are given. Now, at the time of death, let's assume that the cause of death is also recorded. Okay. Now, you are looking at effectiveness of a medicine. So many people who took these medicines have died due to cancer. Now, somebody may be very advanced stage of growth of cancer, but along with cancer something else happens, and it could be the final verdict could be death due to whatever else. That will be recorded. So this is what is called, you have censored data. You don't have data about all individuals, you have data on, it is censored by some other variable. And there is a lot of literature on analyzing using censored data, but if you ignore censoring, once again you will be reaching a conclusion which is not quite valid. So another one on this theme. Somebody claimed this is not written paper but discussions in formal circles, informal circles, academics. IIT JEE सब बकवास है, बंद करना चाहिए. Reason? By then already the IIT JEE has been around for 40 years and more. So you have data on performance in the entrance exam. Okay. Now some of them are selected, some may not even pass, but those who have, you take the people who have admitted and who have passed IIT. Now you collect data on some average grade or whatever way you compute, so their performance in IIT. academic. Okay. Then they found that there is very little correlation between them. The IIT JEE score and the output. Okay. Argument, yeah, it's not doing anything, it is not picking the best. Now there are so many flaws in this. First of all, this means that for 4 years at IIT have not added to anything, neither the teaching nor the time spent by the students along with their friends, right? Secondly, you have only censored data. You have the data on what happened in those 4 years among those who are admitted. You don't have any data among those who are not admitted. So it's no wonder that you don't see strong correlation. Okay? So the whole purpose of taking this as the theme for talk today is that yes, having the data is wonderful today, which was missing in the past. Having computing power today is great. Having LLMs is even best. Without much effort, you get answers. It's amazing. I keep experimenting. Okay. But the point is, as long as there is one more intervention, you look at what the answer is, which one to pick. So, let's say 2 weeks ago, I was in Pune and I gave talk at Ayuka at ISER. So I wrote, I'm trying various such experiments. So I write a title, I write an abstract. And I just feed it to this, improve the title and abstract. And I'll do it at each one, separate, same time. एक Grok में एक बार ChatGPT, एक बार Gemini, एक बार. Now, most of the time, what I get is, I say, अच्छा, yeah, much better presented. Completely my thoughts. I agree with what this has come out with. But something I like a lot more, something I will see, कि हाँ बाकी तो ठीक है, but this one sentence I am not liking. This is not what I implied. Things like that. Okay. No output was completely absurd in this kind of thing. Okay. All are good, but I pick and choose which one I want. If I just feed it whatever आ रहा है उसको copy करके भेज दिया, then it may be disastrous. As long as there is one more intervention available, it is doing wonderfully. Especially on things on which data exists, on things on which are based on language. It's basically improving my own writing, that expressing the same thought as me, but in a much better and clearer fashion. These kind of things it is doing wonderful. Even mathematical proofs, I used to, till about 2 years ago, I used to say, ये बाकी सब तो ठीक है, data पे कर रहे हैं. तो proof कौन सा लिखेगा? How will they come up with a proof of something? वो तो data में नहीं है, नया proof कहाँ से निकलेगा? And there are ways of getting some things done because that extracts some arguments from 10 different contexts and it can mix and match and see which one may work here. Some of you may have heard that, when was it? 2 years ago, a program written in DeepMind, London, they as soon as the IMO was being conducted, they fed that and they got an answer which eventually was like worth a silver medal. Completely done on a program. And the next year they actually made it to the gold. 2025, the system developed at DeepMind got a gold. Okay, so I happened to meet one of the team members who did the 2024 work. Okay. My son works in London with Google, and one of his friends was in DeepMind, and I happened to accidentally meet him, and he was talking about this. So I quizzed him quite a bit, and so basically what plausible arguments in similar problems are available various places. It looks that, it tries to mix and match and see if one of them is getting next to it. And at least what the fellow I was talking to told me was that they could, 4 problems they could get perfect answer. One, there was maybe their code was not doing something exactly the way they wanted it, or they didn't pose the problem correctly. So one had a partial score, and one, they said, we could not translate that problem into a language which our system could understand. So you have to transfer the English question into a thing that the system can understand. So even that reasoning, it is being very successful now. But whether it is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth is still what is remaining. I am not saying that it will never be done. Who would have predicted where we are today? If somebody would have convinced me it will happen in 5 years? No. I have to be honest, right? But the fact remains that the what I call the statistical thinking, which requires you to understand the full gamut of the thing. The question, what answer you are seeking, data, their interconnections. And then things like, are you omitting any important variable? Are you having the whole data? How is the data collected, etc. So, as he mentioned also, and I have also mentioned that I have been doing opinion polls and election related stuff for years, and it was well before I came to CMI. I came to CMI 16 years ago, but nearly 8 years before that I had been doing this. So various people found it very amusing, and including the then IIT Madras director. I would go there for some meeting or the other, and we meet, and he says, "Hey, you are the one who does this." I said, "Yeah." So he was very amused that CMI director and doing such things. So each time we meet, we will be talking something. After a few more years, he says to me, "So, why are you still doing sampling? Now there's so much social media data. Who cares about sample? Your sample size is peanuts compared to what data available on social media. Why are you doing?" And I tried to explain something. He said, no, you are too lazy. You don't want to put in extra work to now take this data. You want your old programs to work. That's why you are staying there. I am trying to convince him that no, and that remains valid today. For one, when you do social media data, okay, you are getting a very biased sample, if you can call it a sample. Okay. Because typically the richer, the younger crowd, the richer crowd, those who have access to this system, those who have access to internet, they are pumping in their views, and the other groups in this are not. Okay. So one, you have a biased sample. Secondly, any kind of so-called survey where the person who writes the answer has to take the initiative to write the answer, you are going to get lopsided. You take any product and you see the survey, the results of the survey, you are going to see more people saying it is absurd, it is bad, ye hua, wo hua, than people who are praising it. Because incentive for a person to actually go into the media and write that is when they are angry about it. You are happy about it, who is going to go and write that no, this product is very good? Very few. So there is a bias. Secondly, let's say in Indian context, there are two channels. One is pro one party, one is another party. These parties can change, the state can change, current election, old election, doesn't matter. Now, people are selective in what they watch. So, either typically people will stick to the channel that they like. What will they like? They agree a lot more with what is coming on that channel. And same applies to websites. The websites conducted by kept by these media houses. So if you see the answers coming on the media, some of them do surveys, just ask people to vote, and when you tell them what is it, no, we take care that one person can't vote 2 times, etc., etc. But still, the data generated on that, how many are supporting party A and how many are supporting party B, has no meaning. If anything, it's amusing, but you can't give weight to that to make a. Now it depends. If you want to use that to just argue with friends, you can do that. Okay, but for any more serious work, you can't. So the whether the data that you have, is it the truth, the whole truth? That remains a very important question. Now, let's see, let me do a poll here. How many of you think that probability is something which is kind of God given? That I take a coin in from my pocket, I am going to toss. How many of you think that the chances that it will come head and tail are half. It's a God given number.
Closer to 20%, I assume.
Okay. All right. So, I have done this experiment. I won't do the whole experiment just now, but so one thing is what I have done in a lecture. So I have a coin. I said I'll each of you can write down on a piece of paper whether head or tail. What is your prediction? I will toss the coin. I will collect all your answers. I will toss the coin, and those who have got the correct answer will get 1 extra day to submit their assignment. And galat ho gaya to no penalty. So that's the incentive for everybody to write something. How does it matter? Kuch to likhenge aap. All right. So this is experiment 1. Second experiment, I will actually toss the coin. Okay. Now the head ya hai ya tail hai is there. After this, I am not even going to touch. I again ask you the same question. Get your answers, and we'll see who gets 1 extra day. Now, will you behave anything differently in the first case and second case? You have no reason to change, right? Because, so what is it saying? The event has already happened. It's no
What is
more.
the difference between the first case and the second case?
Huh?
Could you repeat what was the difference between the first case and the
First case is I ask you to write down and collect the answers, and then I toss. आप सबके सामने I toss, and we can see is it head or tail. Second case, I have tossed it. The coin is here. I am not going to go near it, but none of you can see whether it is head or tail. And then you write. So the event has already happened. It's no, even if coin toss is random, the event has already happened. You have not right. Third case, now, even more interesting. Now I am not going to even toss a coin. There is one side which is favorite of mine. I choose that and put it here. And now the same experiment. Same. Ask you to write down. As long as you can't read my mind, there is no difference between case 1, case 2, case 3.
But,
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking, difference is in the sense that in all the 3 cases, you're trying to find something else. In the last case, you're trying to figure out what your favorite side of the coin is. And the answer is 100% certain. But the fact that we know about it is 0%. So we have 50% chance of getting it right. In the first 2 cases, in the first case, this reminds me of a particular paper that I've read that it says probability is mostly useless because what you're trying to find out is events which have already occurred or not occurred. Like in the cases where events have already occurred, the probability does not make a lot of sense.
Well, we can debate on that endlessly, but even coin toss, okay. So, any of you heard the name Percy Diaconis? So, he is a very famous probabilist, much older than me. He was, he has, I forget forget whether he has now taken retirement or is still there at Stanford. Read about his persidiaconist. He has come to CMI, and his talk was at a time when we didn't have this building, so the seminar hall, and I have never seen bigger crowd in seminar hall than his talk. Okay, literally the people say standing room only. There was not even a room to enter the house. यहाँ वो लेक्चर में खड़े तो लोग यहाँ पर आके बैठे हुए थे. But that is beside the point. But he has actually demonstrated this by, he has a physical device, machine, okay, where you put a coin there in whichever way you want to upper, and it will go up like that and exactly come back what you want. Okay. If those who want to see the picture of this coin, you send a mail to me. You can get my email ID from my name and Google or whatever, and I can send you the exact picture. Today I didn't want to put everything here because then once I have committed to one way, I cannot be interactive like today. So that's why I chosen not to give a presentation of that kind. But the point is that what I put it is that I 30 years ago, when I was very, very young, I have written an article on this kind of thing in the very first year of publication of this series of a thing called Resonance, Indian Academy of Science Resonance.
On randomness.
And in that I think in that also I may have used it, or otherwise in lectures I use it. Randomness is in the eye of the observer. It all depends on how much information you have. Okay. So instead of a coin, if it was a dice, and I toss it here, so maybe sitting here he can figure out कि वो बहुत ज़्यादा है या बहुत minimal है. Exact count भी नहीं कर पाए तो हो सकता है. It is there can be a scenario where at one point you can figure out that much out, but not actually count. Whereas somebody far away will not know anything. So his assignment of probabilities could be different from that of someone else. Right? So to assign probabilities, to interpret probabilities, etc., is quite a bit of. It can, very simple things can lead you to arguments and not arguments. So you do a Google search by seeing probability paradoxes, and you will get plenty of it. I'll ask a question which is very close to. Some of you may have heard this thing called the Monty Hall problem, right? Some of you at least say, okay. So I'm going to give you something which is not Monty Hall problem, but it has a kind of a connect with that. But don't be influenced by this introduction in your thinking. Okay. Now, the question is the following. So, we go back in time. There is some crazy king who decides everything what happens in his kingdom. And there are 3 prisoners who have been convicted and sentenced to death. They are going to be hanged next morning. Previous day, the 3 prisoners make a petition, mercy petition. So the king is in a happy mood. So he says, "Chalo, ek ko maaf kiya. One will be let off." So all 3 are looking at the king. Let's call them ABC. All 3 are looking at the king, hoping ki chalo, hope it is me. So the king doesn't answer. I won't tell you. He says, "Okay, how have you selected?" "I have tossed the dice. I will toss a dice, or I have tossed a dice, and 1 and 2 A, 3 and 4 B, 5 and 6 C will be let off. The other 2 will be executed." Now the king doesn't want to wake up in the morning, so he has to convey to somebody. So he conveys to the jailer कि किसको छोड़ना है, किनको hang करना. So the jailer has been told, and then the king tells the jailer that if you leak any information you will yourself be killed also. Okay. So now the jailer has to be extra careful. Now the question starts here. The three are in cells and they can't communicate to anybody, not even to each other. Far away they are. Okay. Now the jailer goes on a last round in the evening, late night before he sleeps, and next morning is going to come and execute the animal. Now, Mr. A, let's just call ABC, so Mr. A starts chatting with the jailer. You are not going to tell me if I say that, if I ask him, will I be hanged or will I be let off? Jailer says, I don't want to be hanged, so obviously I will not answer you. So yeah, it's okay. But whether I am going to be hanged or not, at least one of the other two is going to be hanged. So jailer thinks, and whether by answering this question he is going to pass on any information. And he decides, yeah. So he says, yeah, of course, at least one of the other two is going to. So Mr. A says, okay, tell me the name of one of the other two who is going to be hanged. Now again the jailer goes in that easy. Whether by answering this question the jailer is going to reveal some information or not. He thinks and then eventually he says B is going to be hanged. So here the dialogue is over, now the question. Did the jailer reveal some information? So it starts with what is information? And number two, has these chances changed or have they not changed?
In my opinion, the jailer did not reveal any information and the chances did not change because.
No, don't argue because for now, we'll come to an argument later. I can argue on both sides, but let's see if everybody agrees with him or if somebody doesn't agree with him.
Yeah, I think jailer did not reveal any
Revealed
information.
information.
Did not.
Revealed information.
So the chances have changed.
Yes.
A's chance has not changed.
Huh?
A's chance have not changed.
A's chance?
Has not changed, but jailer obviously revealed information. He told us B is going to die. So,
No. So information vis-a-vis A.
Okay, then
Our interest is about A.
then he has not revealed information.
No, he still has revealed information.
He just said B is going to die.
Okay, if B is going to die, that means he is not going. If B is going to, let's say, there's the option that A or B is going to die with 1 upon 3 probability.
Initially, each one had
Option B or C is B and C is going to die with 1 upon 3 probability, and option C and A is going to die with 1 upon 3 probability.
I am going to be the devil's advocate. As I said, whichever answer you give, I will argue the other way.
Okay.
So now, to rephrase this argument is that initially, what were the chances of A getting off the hook?
1 by 3.
1 by 3. And now, what are the chances of his getting off the hook?
1 by 3.
Huh?
1 by 3.
1 by 2 now.
1 by 3.
1 by 2 because B to जा रहा है. Between A and C, one more will go and
But
one
C can chance of dying.
But how do we know that these are equal? Like,
We don't know, yeah. We know they are not equal.
Like, something can be 1 by 3, something can be 2 by 3 also. Like, A and C must not have been.
No.
So if the jailer
How does the jailer decide who's going to reveal?
If the jailer picked with equal probability one of the two people who are going to be hanged and said that name, then the chances would not. Then the chances were.
But nothing else is given to you. What is given to you is only what I said in my thing. You don't have a chance of asking a question and then answering. And now you have to make a judgment.
Okay. So
Yeah.
can I present my arguments?
Yeah?
So earlier there was a 1/3 chance that is going to be A and B. 1/3 chance is going to be B and C, and 1/3 chance is going to be C and A.
Yeah.
I don't know much.
Now there's 0% chance that it's going to be C and A.
Yeah.
Okay, now the chances are it's either A and B or B and C. The chances that is B and C is 50% because if he was to pick any random name, he would have picked it up with a 50% probability. And the chances that is A or B is again dependent on if like दो options ही बचे थे तो उसमें वो 100% ये choose करने लगता है कि B है. So now between both of these is now 1/2 is the final probability that A is going to die.
But someone can argue that decision have already been made by giving more information. A का तो
No, but the thing
Information
is, the point of change.
is it relevant to A or not? Okay, let me tell you a little more
He would have-
context.
Agar-
Yeah, here's something. Yeah.
Can I assume that the jailer
No, you cannot assume anything.
attended question?
What I have given as is the only question. You assume that this is a question which appears in an entrance test, you are right. You have no choice. You can't ask any more question, right? वो दिया है, लिखा है, तो उसमें जवाब दीजिए.
I feel the synopsis of it falls down into that if it's both B and C, he would have chosen B and C with a 50% probability.
That's the question.
And since
No, if, as I said, by the way, you don't have to assume. This was a question given in BStat entrance somewhere in 1980, early, when I was still a PhD student, and we were also helping some of us were roped into grade. And the protocol in ISI Calcutta used to be that everybody will, those days were not the short answer, not tic-tac-toe exam as I call them, multiple choice.
this is question of 51 and 52 from the 3-line track, and the further problem, when the question changes it to, I have 2 points.
No, wait. Let me come. So the discussion is going on about grading, and all hell breaks loose because the group of professors and some of us senior PhD students who were to grade, we could not agree on what the answer should be. Okay. झगड़ा शुरू हो गया, अभी like here. झगड़ा नहीं, argument शुरू हो गया. So then the chairman of the committee said that since anyway it was a short answer question. Okay. So anybody who gives a coherent answer, whether their answer is it has changed or not changed, if he gives a coherent answer on the lines that has been discussed here by the two groups, they should get full marks. Okay. And some of us felt that yeah, this is fine. Some people were नहीं, हम गलत आंसर को जवाब मार्क्स नहीं देंगे. So of course the chairman ruled them out from giving. For each question they would be creating a group of people to grade. So he ruled out such people, and those who were willing to give marks to both the side of answers were assigned the task. So it comes down to, like you all started asking question, it all amounts to you have not allowed to answer or make any more questions, but then what it means is you need to model the behavior of the jailer. If the jailer is going, if you assume that the jailer is randomly going to pick, अगर B and C are going to be hanged, he is going to pick each as his answer with probability half, then it doesn't change. If you assume that B and C में तो वो B बोलेगा, then it changes. So in other words, what are as probability paradoxes have to do with incomplete information being given as a question, and then depends on in what mood you start reading it and which way you think you will have an answer. The so-called Buffett's needle problem. There are tons of paradoxes. Each of them will come down to something of this kind. That incomplete information being given in the question, and you assume something without knowing that you are assuming. Okay? And that is what leads to problem. And these kind of things increasingly will be happening when you are entirely going to rely on a machine with the data and using LLMs. Okay. It makes all kinds of assumptions.
Now that I think about it again, I feel my answer is wrong, because the materialistic of what would have been said, he would have said one of those two names, and it would have still eliminated one condition, but my probability would essentially
So
have
I
been
was,
the same.
let me reveal now, I was on the side which was arguing that it has not changed. And the argument said that what if the answer was C? It doesn't make any difference, it will have to be this. That means, just by, so then you don't need to hear the answer. B bola to be half है, C bola to be half है, so then बिना listening only it has changed. So just by asking a question, probability has changed. Something is wrong, it cannot change. So the people who are arguing the other side, what do you mean? What is the answer? The answer is not C. If I don't have to argue what would happen if that was. Answer is B. So it comes down to that when you are getting some, what was the question asked which has revealed this breakthrough? If the question was, is B going to be hanged or not? Answer yes. And name one of the other to be who is be hanged and answer B. Is there a difference between these two set of events, yes or no? That is where it comes down. Okay. So
second question would have given the answer as well. What will be while the first question did not change the probability.
So so there are many subtle things in using this. So it's a question of, I mean, this is a wonderful tool, but a lot depends on how you are using it. Without knowing, it can be using it in a wrong way, and then depends on, in finance world there is a the so-called risk management. There are two things used. One is probability of risk. It's like somebody has bought an insurance policy. What are the chances that the person will pass off during the period of the policy? That is risk event. And number two, what is the loss given the risk event? Is it a 1,000 का insurance policy, 1 lakh का है, 1 million का है, 1 billion का है? What is the loss given the risk? So likewise, in using these things, the loss given the risk, when it is huge, you need to be careful. If it's a minor, then you can use it. So I put it in this way, that as a recommendation engine it is great, but as a decision maker it is still far away from reaching a stage where it can be taken as face value. How many of you have heard the phrase recommendation engine? Recommendation engine. So when you use you go to YouTube, you start watching something as a sequence. So right hand में क्या क्या आएगा? Who decides that? That is what is called a recommendation. And it is wonderful. Often you discover things which you had not known. Some you know, but you like it. That comes up. Let's say a song you are listening to, and some you might discover that a song you didn't know of also comes up. This was developed by Netflix. Netflix was a company which started way before the internet became the rage. It was in the era where video cassettes, so-called VCR era. So earlier in US there was a thing called Blockbusters, which used to run stores in every big city or even medium cities, and you can go and rent it and return it for a fixed fee. But then for that you needed a store in every city and advertisement and people to employ there and so on. And if you don't return in time, you will have a fine or that. Netflix came up from nowhere and they said we are going to same business but no store, online. You call us and tell us, we'll send the courier se aa jayega. It's like today's Zomato and Swiggy and Blinkit and whatnot. That was the first time it introduced. You order a film, it will come to your home, they'll come to pick it up also when the thing is due. घर पे बैठ के. And along with that, once you started, you have rented a few, then somebody there said, we can send them a recommendation. कि चलो, you are returning this, but maybe you like some of these. हम carry है, अभी चाहिए, अभी ले लो आप. That is how they started. And that became such a big success, so that thing then more people took it up, and that is now what is as a recommendation engine available everywhere. So that is also interpreting data. Okay. Amongst the people who like this movie, how many also like the following? As simple as that, and it is doing wonderful. So you can't declare it is useless, but you can't put your full faith on it either. You can't, whatever money you have, you are going to bet on the first one which comes, that is the best, that is going to be the big hit. You can't do that. So you can't bet all your money on one thing which is coming out of a recommendation. So the loss given the risk. What if it is wrong? What are the loss to be? So I've been keeping track of the watch, the time. So let me conclude soon, but we have had some discussion, but anybody wants a specific question, I can answer that. But on themes I talked about or some other theme, doesn't matter.
Is there something that we follow about probability type questions which have complete information?
Sorry?
the issue with the question that you gave, that you just didn't have complete information. Right? So, are there any weird questions which have complete information?
So that is where the problem is. That to bring in weirdity, that means you have to bring in something which is missing given.
There's no other weird problem.
No, then it is a model. How you model, given the information, how do you model the event?
Yeah, so I'm saying given complete information, but given the model and all. Like it was a math question, not a.
मैथ क्वेश्चन में तो एक ही आंसर आएगा, मैथ क्वेश्चन में दो आंसर नहीं आएंगे ना.
Weird question.
Non-intuitive, something which goes non-intuitive.
Non-intuitive is possible.
हाँ, non-intuitive type ऐसा है कोई अच्छा आपके पास.
अभी तो ऑफहैंड नहीं है, non-intuitive तो है, but ऑफहैंड नहीं है. But typically the paradoxes are because of something you can put as incomplete.
Are there areas in statistics which will be of more importance in this era and in the future years? And which are those?
Difficult to give an opinion on that, but right now the lot of effort is going on is what is called explainable AI. So your AI tool gives you a recommendation, and you know nothing more than कि आपके your engine has given this as answer. Okay. Now you try to see whether you can explain it in some other way. Can you? Because you can't testify in a court and you say that you are the expert and so is guilty, and why? Because my recommendation engine says so, right? So given the answer, how do you locate and can you justify, or you take the top 5 instead of one answer, take top 5 and then see which one is more explainable, if any, things like that. There is effort going on. What is being called explainable AI.
Is there a general strategy for incomplete information games?
Incomplete information games. So difficult to answer that.
My question would be like, as a student, how should I be using AI to help with learning statistics?
Learning statistics versus answering an exam or doing an assignment.
Okay. So for the remaining two, the answer gets quite easy. If you just plug in the question paper, it answers everything. It's surprisingly horrifying. But my question is like, for learning, how do we use AI for helping projects, for large projects? For example, if I'm doing a project for ELO rating in F1 races. And so how do I leverage AI to reduce my workload and maybe do some analysis on my behalf?
Difficult to answer these things. It depends on what you try and what works, what doesn't work. It is impossible to tell what will work. But things for which data already exists, it surprisingly can do wonderful things. So, last one example I will give. I tried this one month ago. So, event in the past, I will tell the event also. And I remembered everything about the event. I was describing it to a friend and could not remember the name involved. So, instead of trying to search my own files and कहाँ पे लिखा है नहीं लिखा है, I asked Gemini, who was the member of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's INA cabinet whom Rajeeva Karandikar met on a train journey from Kanpur to Delhi about 25 years ago. 1 second, zoom the answer came. Lakshmi Sehgal was the name, and then it even describes a little more that this was at a time when she was contesting against Abdul Kalam for president's position, and Karandikar being an expert on this, they discussed this, discussed that, karke sab. So, of course, I must have written that. Nobody else could have written that. I must have written it to some friends. We have a friends group, Yahoo group, जिसमें हम लिखते थे. So, ऐसा कुछ data कहीं से आके, but in 1 second it gave the thing before I could blink my eyes. So, data for which it has data, it is doing surprisingly wonderful.
Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't answer your question, but yeah, little more we can talk maybe, or more precise question I can answer.